Hello. I could just call this some version of church. So I went through Paul Vanderklay's video in his rough draft for Sunday. I put it on the loudspeaker for the family, and I was able to like ask like my oldest son if he understood what Paul was saying, and he says, "I'm not listening." So then I was able to talk about what Paul was talking about and engage him with the in the conversation. Um, At one point, Paul was talking about bad things in the world, and he was listing out all these numbers. And so I was curious if my son was listening to that because, you know, my religion, what my culture was, um, you know, my my pawpaw taught my dad and my uncles, that you're a Palmer, and basically you have an advantage over everyone. And and then my dad taught my brother and me the same thing. And so I'm teaching something similar. And the way I put it is we have a lot of opportunities that a lot of other people don't have. And I mentioned the uh, the Spider-Man quote: "With great power comes great responsibility." And so the other thing that I was taught was that you try your best. It's like you get to choose what you do, but when you do it, try your best. And then the kind of the highlight of Paul's sermon was at the very end. He's talking about how Jesus washed people's feet, and that this this pattern of being a loving servant is it scales. And then the question is for us is to figure out what loving and serving looks like every day. And that's it, right? The I don't think that, for example, well, nobody's doing it perfect. We all are making mistakes. And when we participate in a community or a church, hopefully the community will be able to help with error correction to show us how we can be better at loving and serving. And so, you know, that that Holy Spirit of trying to be loving and serving does scale, but um, there are a lot of problems and solutions, one of which is learning how to cooperate and coordinate. And Paul does not have this figured out. Um, and I would say nobody has this figured out because as soon as we figure this out, we will have peace on earth. The and so you know, perhaps I'm trying to demonstrate how the church can scale. You know, and then after I got done with that video, I went and I read the short version of Frozen to my children, and they weren't paying attention to Paul, but I read Frozen, and they were paying attention. And then this in the story, you basically have this pattern of loving and serving, and it plays out into Anna being willing to sacrifice herself for her sister. So the same message that Paul was trying to teach is in Frozen, but Paul's not using Frozen. And if there were a place um, to send children at church, I'm wondering would they use Frozen because Um, I think sometimes people use the Bible um, in a way that is idolatrous. So the teaching is what's important. The teaching to that we are supposed to figure out how to be loving and serving. So when I talk to my son about cooperation and coordination, he had, I told him, we don't, you know, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And he kind of repeats what I've taught him is that, you know, um, everyone knows something and none of us know everything. And he mentioned his school. So we do homeschool, but at one point when he was about 18 months old, we tried out a Montessori school. It was very convenient and they were just starting and they didn't have a lot of people. So he said, because I'd mentioned like if we went to church, I would send the kids off to be with these other kids while we were in church. And he said, kind of like when I went to school, you drop us off, you drop me off, and then you pick me up. And I said, yeah. And so I told him that there's different styles of education. There's different schools, like a school of thought. So there's different ways of doing schooling. And I told him how that school was a Montessori school, and that's different than forest school, which, you know, he does do some forest school. You get outside and do your learning. And I tried to show how the school that my wife and I provide for him is different than forest school and Montessori school because we actually integrate video games and digital content. And the teacher at this Montessori school did not like this digital content. But I told him that the most important thing in my school and my wife and I's school is to learn self-control. And that's above reading and writing and math, which would be like kind of the next most important things. So if you want to be, loving and serving, you have to learn self-control. And that also means learning to pay attention to your attention. So Paul starts off that video talking about how we tend to be monofocal. And, this is not ideal. So ideally, we would have an education system that teaches us self-control and how to pay attention to our attention such that we are not monofocal, such that we have a flexibility in being able to switch our attention and give priority to the thing that deserves it. Being able to rearrange our value hierarchy properly. Like this is the essential uh, education that is missing throughout most of the population, the world population. And as a result, we have this monofocal tendency, which Paul is doing because he has, if you're doing it, and he may just be analyzing the culture, which is what a sociologist does, and he may not be doing it, but he's just saying that's what people are doing, but maybe not. So I don't want to accuse. The so these are some of the basics on learning to become someone who can serve and love, is getting our education system right, and it needs to be founded in the fundamentals of self-control and this paying attention to attention and being able to be flexible in your value hierarchy such that it can adjust to the context of the situation. And hopefully you find the thing that it needs to be rooted in, which I think this idea of loving and serving is a good foundation. Um, Everything else can flow from that, and the way that it emanates and manifests out of that is unpredictable and diverse and still good. The way that I have tried, so once I've practiced the basics, essentially I just repeat what my dad taught me is you try your best. And that means learning to develop skills and habits. You want to, it's just the same way you would formulate your value hierarchy and be flexible and mold it properly. You want to mold your habits and your routines and develop your skills. And uh, then you will actually be able to provide service. So Jesus washed people's feet. Like that's pretty easy. Well, I say that, but I've been rubbing feet. I've been rubbing my wife's feet for over a decade, and um, you can actually you can always get better at something so simple as rubbing feet. So whatever you do, try your best, even if it's rubbing feet. But also, you know, there's probably an infinite amount of skills you can develop besides rubbing feet. And so my skill is tech support. So um, that's my recommendation is, you know, to to do this simple pattern of figuring out how to be loving and serving, figuring out um, and practicing giving attention to your attention, learning self-control, and that being the basis. Um, Giving attention to attention leads to learning how to identify and recognize the Holy Spirit, and and with that willingness to be serious and try your best, along with these foundations, it scales. Um, the thing that most people are missing right now is this willingness to do error correction with others and coordination and cooperation. And I can get better at it too. It's like, why? What kind of relationship do I have with my neighbors and extended family? And, um, figuring that out. What kind of tribe do I have? Figuring that out. I don't have it all figured out. But these videos are kind of an invitation, right? And and an offering of my skills, which I would say the skill set I have is based in tech support. So, if God were going to give me a new name, I joked, but it's not a real joke. It's for real. It would be tech support. So that's my name is tech support, and that's my name. Whether it's in my neighborhood with my neighbors, my family, my extended family, my communities, tech support. That's my name. That's the way I wash feet, and that's the way I serve. It's not the only way, but I feel like it's the thing that I have an expertise around that most people don't have. And so this ability to cooperate and coordinate is coupled to technology, and um, and I can help with error correction around technology and goals of scaling. So that's my offering. Um, we'll see how that plays out over time. But yeah, I'm interested in Paul getting to John 15 because, I've got my song that I wrote. I'm just a helper and a volunteer. And notice in John 15, the helper. And that's what I try to do. I try to be the helper as a husband, as a father, as a software engineer, tech support. Um, I'm not going to be your husband and your father, all you people on the internet, but I can be tech support. And I've done a lot of thinking and work and practice around technology and tech support and operating at scale. And so, you know, that's my prophecy. If God gives me the chance, I'll be building a lot of technology and infrastructure and facilitating and basically doing things better than your government can do it. Creating the technology your government should be using the processes and the protocols your government should be using. They don't have good tech support, and I've offered to be tech support. I actually applied for the position. It wasn't called tech support, it was called Chief Information Officer of the United States government, um, Director of Technology. Uh, they never responded, and they're not very good at what they do. Like right now, they've got these hard drives filled with all of this data, and they don't know what to do with it. But they could be identifying the people who are filled with the Holy Spirit, who have developed these skills and habits and want to help and find those people and encourage them and facilitate their ability. You want to empower their ability to serve. They're not doing that. They could be. That's what I'd be recommending if I was director of technology, is using machine learning models to extract, it's called ETL, extract, transform, load data uh, in order to train models, in order to identify people. And so what like the CIA does is they may be using it to identify threats. They're not using it to identify heroes. Um, that's the reason I call myself Hero Looking for Group, because I just want to make it easy for those kinds of people to identify me. Like if you um, are a person who is loving and serving and serious and doing all of these things, then you are a hero in my book. And you would even claim to be, you would claim that that's your intent, right? You have to communicate your intent. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed church.